My friend's sister falsely claimed I got her pregnant. My parents disowned me without proof. And only after the DNA test cleared me did they beg for forgiveness. About a year ago, my life turned into a complete mess, and I have to get this off my chest. I never thought I'd be sharing this on Reddit, but I guess that's what happens when your family goes crazy, and you're left wondering how it even happened. Let me start from the beginning, because trust me, this is one of those situations where you're just like, seriously, what the hell? My buddy Dave has a sister named Jenny. I've known them both for years. We all grew up in the same neighborhood and hung out sometimes, but it was nothing major. Jenny was always kind of different. I don't want to sound mean, but she had some mental health issues. I'm not privy to all the details, and honestly, it wasn't my business. Dave never talked much about it, and I didn't pry, but everyone knew Jenny had her struggles. About a year ago, out of nowhere, Jenny contacted me and said she was pregnant. Okay, cool, right? Except for one tiny detail, she claimed I was the father. At that moment, I swear my brain just short-circuited. I was like, wait, what? Let me be crystal clear, I've never even hugged Jenny, let alone been intimate with her, not even once. For her to accuse me of this was beyond comprehension. I couldn't process it. I told her straight up, Jenny, I don't know what you're talking about, but there's no way I'm the father. We've never been close like that. She just kept repeating it, as if I'd magically remember a night that never happened. It was bizarre, to say the least. I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe this was part of her mental health struggles, but deep down, I was freaking out. This is where things start going off the rails. Jenny refused to take a prenatal paternity test. I was thinking, if you're so sure it's my kid, why wouldn't you just take the test and prove it? But she wouldn't budge. She kept saying things like, you need to be there for your child, and you're abandoning us before the baby's even born. It was guilt trip city, and I wasn't buying it. I made it clear, if she wasn't going to take the test, I wasn't going to sign anything. I wasn't about to get legally tied to a kid that wasn't mine. Simple, right? I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. Cue the family drama. A few weeks later, my parents found out. I love my parents, but they have this whole traditional values thing going on. The second they heard about the situation, they lost it, completely lost it. They were calling me names, saying I was a deadbeat and a disgrace. I was just standing there, trying to get a word in, but they weren't listening. I told them, Mom, Dad, this isn't my kid. Jenny's making this up. But they weren't having it. It was like once they got it in their heads that I was responsible for this baby, they couldn't shake it. There were a lot of nasty arguments after that. Things were said that I probably can't take back, and honestly, I'm still mad about it. My parents kept pushing me to do the right thing and step up as a father, even though I kept telling them it wasn't my kid. It didn't matter to them. In their eyes, I was already guilty. They said they didn't raise me to be a deadbeat and couldn't believe I would deny my own child. Here's where things get even crazier. I wasn't even in the same state when Jenny would have gotten pregnant. That's right, she was staying at a friend's place for an entire month when she supposedly conceived. I brought this up to my parents, and they just brushed it off, saying, people make mistakes. Yeah, well, this wasn't just a mistake. This was a full-blown accusation that could wreck my life. Fast forward to about 6 months into Jenny's pregnancy. By this point, the whole family had turned against me. Every family dinner, every phone call, every text. It was all about how I needed to man up and take responsibility for this baby. I was losing my mind. It was like I was in some nightmare, and no matter what I said or did, nobody believed me. My friends were mostly on my side, thankfully, but even a couple of them started questioning things like, are you sure, man? Maybe you don't remember something? Finally, my parents dropped the ultimate bomb on me. If I didn't step up and act like a father, they were cutting me out of their lives, disowning me, kicking me to the curb. At first, I thought they were bluffing, but nope, they were dead serious. They told me flat out that if I didn't go along with this, I was no longer welcome in the family. Sure enough, when I didn't cave, they disowned me. Let me tell you, that hurt. I was pissed off, confused, and just plain hurt. These were the people who raised me, who were supposed to have my back, and they chose to believe someone else over me. My own family threw me out like I didn't matter. It was brutal. Things got even weirder after the baby was born. My mom was at the hospital, playing the role of proud grandma. I didn't even know until later. Jenny still wouldn't take the paternity test, so I had to go through some legal steps to get it done. When the results came in, guess what? Not my kid. 0% chance I was the father. As soon as I got that paper in my hand, I felt this wave of relief and anger all at once. I sent the results to my parents, thinking, finally, they'll see the truth. They'll realize they were wrong, and everything will go back to normal. Nope. Instead, they started blowing up my phone with apologies, offers of money, and begging me to forgive them. My dad even sent me a few $100s in the mail, like that was going to fix things. Here's the thing, I kept the money. Yeah, I took it. I felt like they owed me for all the crap they put me through. But forgive them? No way. I made it clear that if they were willing to disown me over something like this, I wasn't going to risk opening myself up to that kind of betrayal again. Most of my friends were on my side, but a few, along with my therapist, started saying things like, maybe you should give them another chance. They're your parents after all. I get it, I really do, but how do you just forgive someone who is ready to throw you away so easily? How do you trust someone who believed a lie over their own child? That's where I'm at now, stuck between knowing I did nothing wrong and wondering if I should even bother trying to fix things with my family. But every time I think about it, I remember how quickly they turned on me, and I can't shake the feeling that they failed me when I needed them the most. After everything that went down with my parents and Jenny's baby drama, you'd think things would calm down, right? Nope, life had other plans for me. If anything, the whole mess just kept spiraling. You'd think proving I wasn't the dad would have been the end of it, but man, I wish it was that simple. Turns out, when people don't want to admit they messed up, they'll do anything to avoid taking responsibility. After the paternity test results came in and confirmed I wasn't the father, I thought, all right, now my parents will realize they were wrong, and maybe things can get back to normal. But instead of the relief I was expecting, things got way more complicated. First off, Jenny completely lost it. She started spreading rumors around town that I had faked the test or somehow tampered with it. Yeah, you read that right. In her mind, I had somehow convinced an entire lab to rig the results in my favor. Like, how would I even do that? I'm just a regular guy, not some mastermind who knows how to manipulate DNA tests. But Jenny wasn't hearing any of it. She was dead set on making me the bad guy in her story. She went around telling people that I was abandoning her and the baby, that I'd tricked everyone into thinking I wasn't the dad. It didn't make sense, but it didn't matter. People started to believe her. Small-town rumors spread fast, and soon I had folks giving me dirty looks at the grocery store, like I was some kind of scumbag. I even had people confront me, asking why I wasn't stepping up to take care of my kid. It was infuriating. I had the test results to prove I wasn't the father, but no one seemed to care. Jenny was out there playing the victim, and I was getting blamed for something I had no part in. I'd never felt so helpless in my life. It's one thing when your family turns on you, but when the whole town starts thinking you're the bad guy, that hits differently. My parents, well, they were still trying to play nice, but it was clear they didn't know how to handle the situation either. My mom kept calling, leaving these long, emotional voicemails about how she just wanted her family back together. She didn't even address what had happened. She just wanted to sweep everything under the rug, like nothing had ever gone down. She even suggested I come over for dinner, like that was going to magically fix all the damage they'd done. It wasn't just awkward, it was insulting. After everything they put me through, they thought a few family dinners and some fake smiles would make it all okay. No apology, no acknowledgement of how badly they messed up. Just let's move on. It was like they didn't even realize how much trust they had shattered. And that's the thing. Once trust is broken like that, it's not something you can just patch up with a meal and a hug. It takes real work, real effort to rebuild, and they weren't even willing to admit they were wrong. The kicker came when my dad tried to bribe me. He sent me an email offering to buy me a new car if I would come back to the family. Like what? They think they can just buy my forgiveness? It was so out of touch with reality that I didn't even know how to respond. I just stared at the email for a while, trying to figure out if this was some kind of sick joke. Nope. My dad was serious. I didn't respond. I couldn't. What do you even say to something like that? They didn't care about fixing things the right way. They just wanted me back in their lives because it was convenient for them. The fact that they thought throwing money at me would solve everything made me realize how little they actually understood what they'd done. The worst part came later when I found out Jenny had started reaching out to people I knew, trying to drag them into her drama. She even contacted my ex-girlfriend, Samantha, and tried to convince her that I was this terrible person who had abandoned his kid. Sam and I hadn't spoken in years, but out of the blue, I got a text from her saying we needed to talk. At first, I had no idea what she was talking about, but when she explained that Jenny had been messaging her, trying to stir up old drama, I just about lost it. I called Jenny and told her to stop. I was done with the games, done with the lies, and I wasn't going to let her drag my friends and exes into her mess. But she just laughed and hung up on me. It was like talking to a wall. She was so wrapped up in her fantasy world that nothing I said would get through to her. At this point, I was seriously considering getting a lawyer involved. I didn't want to take it that far, but what choice did I have? Jenny was out here ruining my reputation. My parents were enabling her behavior, and I felt like I had no one in my corner. My closest friends supported me, sure, but even they didn't know the full extent of how bad things had gotten. Eventually, I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living in this constant state of stress, waiting for the next rumor to pop up, or the next crazy accusation to come my way. I decided to cut ties completely, not just with Jenny, but with my parents too. It wasn't easy, it sucked, actually, but I knew I couldn't keep letting them drag me down. I wrote my parents a long email explaining everything, how I felt betrayed, how they had failed me, how I couldn't trust them anymore. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them straight up that I wasn't ready to forgive them, and I didn't know if I ever would be. I told them that if they wanted any chance at a relationship with me in the future, they'd have to start by actually apologizing and taking responsibility for their actions. No more pretending everything was fine. No more sweeping things under the rug. As for Jenny, I blocked her on everything. I couldn't deal with her manipulations anymore. She wasn't my problem, and I wasn't going to let her keep dragging me into her mess. I even had to tell Dave, her brother, that I couldn't be around his family for a while. That was tough because Dave's always been a good friend, but I had to put my own well-being first. It's been a few months since I cut them off, and honestly, it's been a relief. Sure, there are days when I feel guilty or second-guess myself, but overall, I know I made the right call. Sometimes you have to walk away, even when it's hard. Yeah, it's messy and complicated, but at least now I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder waiting for the next disaster to hit. I can finally breathe again. But man, if you told me a year ago that this is where I'd end up, I never would have believed you. Life's funny like that, I guess. Update 1. Here's where things get even weirder. I thought cutting ties with Jenny and my parents would be the end of the chaos. I figured once I removed them from my life, everything would calm down and I could move on. But of course, things don't work out that easily. Cutting them off was just the beginning of a whole new mess. A couple of weeks after I sent that email to my parents and blocked Jenny, I got an unexpected message from an old high school friend, Mike. We hadn't talked in years, but out of nowhere, he's asking if I'm doing okay. At first I thought, okay, that's random, but then he told me that my parents had reached out to him. Now, Mike and I weren't even that close back in the day, so for my parents to contact him, that was a huge red flag. Apparently, they'd been going around, trying to get people to talk to me on their behalf. I'm talking old friends, distant relatives, even people I barely knew. They were telling everyone that I was in a bad place and that they were worried about me. It was like they were trying to make me seem like the one who was unstable. The worst part? They were framing the whole thing as if I was the one who needed to apologize for cutting them off. Mike was cool about it. He knew something was up and wanted to give me a heads up. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I started getting messages from all sorts of people. People I hadn't spoken to in years. People I'd only met a few times. They were all saying the same thing. Your parents are really worried about you, or you should give them another chance. It was insane. They had somehow convinced all these people that I was the bad guy in this situation, that I had gone off the rails and needed to make amends. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, just trying to move on with my life, and my parents were out here doing a full-on PR campaign, trying to make me look like the villain. I felt like I was in some kind of weird alternate reality where nothing made sense. No matter how much I tried to stay away from the drama, it just kept finding its way back to me. The final straw came when they reached out to my boss. Yeah, you heard that right. My parents called my job. I don't even know how they got the number, but they somehow tracked down my boss's contact info and called the office, telling him they were concerned about me and that I wasn't in the right headspace. Can you imagine how humiliating that was? My boss pulled me into his office one day, looking all serious, and asked if everything was okay at home. I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say at first. Like, what do you say when your boss is asking if your parents think you've gone off the deep end? I explained the whole situation to him, and luckily, he was super understanding about it. He even apologized for bringing it up, but man, the damage was done. My own parents were out there trying to mess with my job now. It felt like they were determined to ruin everything for me, just because I wouldn't bend to their will. After that, I had no choice. I went to a lawyer and started the process of getting a restraining order against them. I didn't want to take things that far, but what choice did I have? They were messing with my career, my friends, my peace of mind. I had to protect myself, even if it meant legally cutting them off. The process was long and stressful. Court dates, paperwork, and a whole lot of anxiety came with it. But at the same time, I felt a weird sense of relief. Like finally, I was taking control of the situation. No more letting them invade every part of my life. No more letting them manipulate the narrative. Of course, when they found out about the restraining order, all hell broke loose. My mom sent me this long, guilt-trippy email about how she never imagined her own son would do this and how family is supposed to stick together no matter what. She kept saying that I was tearing the family apart, that I was the one causing all the pain. It was textbook manipulation, but I didn't bite. I didn't respond. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but things got even worse before they got better. One day I came home from work to find my car vandalized. Someone had keyed the word liar into the side of it. I had no proof it was my parents, but come on, who else would it be? I hadn't told anyone about the restraining order except for a few close friends. My parents were the only ones who had a motive to pull something like that. It was like they couldn't handle losing control, so they had to lash out in whatever way they could. I filed a police report, but nothing ever came of it. Just another reminder that even when you try to do things the right way, sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can turn into your worst enemies. I started parking my car at a friend's house after that, just to be safe. I couldn't take any more chances. I even installed security cameras around my apartment, just in case they tried something else. It felt like I was living in a constant state of paranoia, always waiting for the next shoe to drop. But eventually, things started to calm down. The restraining order went through, and my parents were officially barred from contacting me or coming anywhere near my home or workplace. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could finally breathe. It's been a few months now, and I'm still picking up the pieces. I had to do a lot of damage control with my friends and coworkers, explaining the whole situation to them and making sure they knew the truth. Most of them were supportive, but a few were skeptical, like, "Are you sure your parents would really go that far?" I get it. It's hard to believe. But when you've lived through it, you know how far some people will go when they feel like they're losing control. Looking back, I never imagined things would get this bad. It's crazy how quickly family can turn on you when you refuse to play by their rules. But I've learned something important through all of this. You can't let anyone, not even your family, dictate how you live your life. Sometimes you have to make the hard choice to walk away, even when it hurts. I don't know what the future holds for me and my parents. Maybe one day they'll realize what they did and apologize for real. Maybe not. But either way, I'm done letting them control my life. I've got my own path to follow, and I'm not looking back. Update 2. Here's where things take a bit of a turn. After I finally got the restraining order and started trying to rebuild my life, I thought things would finally settle down. But surprise, surprise, life had other plans. Just when I was beginning to feel like I could breathe again, my parents found a new way to mess with me. This time, it wasn't direct contact, it wasn't vandalizing my car or sending emails. No, this was a whole different level of messed up. One day, I'm sitting at home, just minding my own business when I get a letter in the mail. Nothing too weird about that, right? Except this letter is from a lawyer. At first, I thought it was something related to the restraining order, maybe some final paperwork or something. But nope, it was a lawsuit. My own parents were suing me for what you ask? Emotional distress. I couldn't even believe what I was reading. They were actually suing me for cutting them off, saying that my actions had caused them severe emotional damage and that they were entitled to compensation. They even claimed I had alienated them from the rest of the family, which was complete nonsense, because they were the ones who isolated me, not the other way around. I sat there for a good few minutes, just staring at the letter, trying to process what was happening. I mean, who does that? Who sues their own kid because they're mad they got cut off? I didn't even know what to do. Part of me wanted to laugh at how ridiculous it all was, but another part of me was seriously stressed out. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was legal, and it was about to get real messy. I called my lawyer immediately. I couldn't handle this on my own. She was just as shocked as I was. She'd seen plenty of messy family cases, but suing your own kid for emotional distress? That was new, even for her. We went over the details of the lawsuit, and while most of it was clearly bogus, I knew we couldn't just ignore it. They were serious, and that meant I had to fight back. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and stress. I had to gather all the evidence of everything that had happened, the paternity test results, the restraining order, the harassment I'd been dealing with. My lawyer was confident we could win, but it still felt surreal that it had come to this. My own parents were trying to drag me through the mud in court, all because I refused to let them control me anymore. But here's the thing, they didn't stop at just the lawsuit. Oh no, they had to take it a step further. They started reaching out to other family members, trying to turn them against me. I started getting messages from aunts, uncles, cousins, all people I hadn't heard from in years. They were all saying the same thing. Why can't you just make peace with your parents? Or family is everything, you're being selfish. It was like they'd been brainwashed into thinking I was the villain in all of this. I was furious, not just at my parents, but at the whole situation. It felt like no matter what I did, no matter how much I tried to protect myself, they always found a way to twist the narrative and make me look like the bad guy. I mean, how do you explain to someone who's only hearing one side of the story that your parents are suing you for emotional distress because you enforced boundaries? It got to the point where I had to cut off even more people. I blocked family members, unfriended people on social media, and just shut down any connection to that side of my life. It wasn't because I didn't care about them. I did. But I couldn't keep explaining myself over and over again to people who had already made up their minds. It was exhausting, and I was done trying to justify my decisions to people who weren't willing to see the bigger picture. Eventually, the court date rolled around. I showed up with my lawyer, prepared for whatever nonsense they were going to throw at me, and let me tell you, it was a circus. My parents had this whole sob story lined up about how they'd always been there for me, how they'd tried to help me through tough times, and how I had cruelly cut them off without reason. They painted themselves as the victims in all of this, which was honestly impressive, considering they were the ones who disowned me in the first place. But my lawyer wasn't having it. She tore their arguments apart, piece by piece, showing the judge all the evidence of their harassment, the restraining order, the paternity test, everything. It was brutal, and by the end of it, you could see the judge wasn't buying their story. The judge ruled in my favor, obviously. The lawsuit was thrown out, and my parents were ordered to pay my legal fees, which was a small victory in the grand scheme of things. But even though I won, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like I had just barely escaped a nightmare, and there was still so much fallout to deal with. After the case, my parents tried one last-ditch effort to get back into my life. They sent me this long, emotional letter about how they were sorry for everything, how they just wanted to make things right, and how they couldn't bear to lose me. It was the same old guilt-tripping nonsense they had been pulling from the start, and honestly, I didn't even respond. I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going back. There's only so much someone can take before they have to walk away for good, and yeah, it hurt. Cutting off your family isn't easy, no matter how bad things get. But sometimes it's necessary for your own sanity. I couldn't keep letting them drag me into their chaos, no matter how much they claimed to love me. Their version of love was toxic, and I wasn't going to let it poison my life anymore. So that's where I'm at now. The lawsuit's behind me, the restraining order's still in place, and I'm moving forward. It hasn't been easy, but I'm learning how to live without all the noise, without the constant stress of wondering when the next disaster is going to hit. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I have some control over my life, and that feels pretty damn good. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day things will change, maybe they won't, but right now I'm focusing on myself, on rebuilding the parts of my life that they tried to tear down. It's been a long road, but I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Update 3. If you've been keeping up with everything so far, you'd think after the lawsuit mess and the restraining order, that'd be the end of the madness. But nope, my family found a way to surprise me one last time, and this one, honestly, left me shaking my head because I didn't think they could sink any lower. But here we are. A couple of months after the court ruled in my favor, things had finally started to calm down. I had cut ties with everyone causing me stress, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could actually focus on rebuilding my life. No random messages from old friends, no letters from lawyers, just peace. Or at least, that's what I thought. One day, I'm out running some errands, just doing normal stuff like grocery shopping, when I bump into my cousin, Melissa. Now, Melissa and I hadn't talked much during all this drama. We were never super close growing up, but we'd always gotten along. So when I saw her, I figured, why not say hi? We ended up chatting for a bit, and at first it was pretty normal, catching up on life, work, the usual stuff. But then, out of nowhere, she hits me with, "Hey, did you hear what your parents are planning?" I froze. "Planning?" I asked, suddenly feeling that familiar pit in my stomach. Melissa looked a little uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure if she should even be telling me, but she sighed and went on. "Yeah, they're throwing a big family reunion next month. Apparently they've been telling everyone they're hoping it'll be a reconciliation thing between you and them." I couldn't believe it. They were seriously planning some kind of ambush reunion to try and force me back into the family. I asked Melissa for more details, and it turned out they were inviting everyone. Distant relatives, family friends, people I hadn't seen in years. The kicker? They'd been telling everyone that I'd be there, acting like I was in on this whole thing. I was furious. I hadn't agreed to anything, and now they were setting me up to look like the bad guy if I didn't show up. It was another classic move from my parents: manipulate the situation, make me look like the villain, and try to guilt-trip me into doing what they wanted. I thanked Melissa for letting me know and told her straight up that I wasn't going. She understood, but even she seemed a little torn, like she was buying into my parents' "we just want to fix things" narrative. I could see it in her face. She wanted me to go, to make things right. But after everything they'd done, there was no way I was walking into that trap. I went home that night and thought long and hard about what to do. I knew I wasn't going to the reunion, but part of me felt like I needed to say something. I couldn't just ignore this. So I decided to send one final message to my parents, laying everything out once and for all. The next morning, I sat down and wrote them an email. It wasn't long, but it was direct. I told them that I knew about the reunion and that I wasn't coming. I made it clear that I didn't want to be a part of any reconciliation that was being forced on me, especially not in front of a crowd of people. I told them that if they really cared about fixing things, they'd have to start by respecting my boundaries, and until they could do that, there was nothing more to talk about. I didn't expect a response, and honestly, I didn't need one. I just needed to set the record straight one last time. But of course, my parents couldn't just let it go. A few days later, my dad called me. I didn't pick up, but he left this long, rambling voicemail about how I was tearing the family apart and how this reunion was supposed to be a fresh start for all of us. He even tried to guilt me by saying, "Your grandparents would be so disappointed in how you're handling this." That voicemail hit me hard, not because I believed it, but because it reminded me of all the times my parents had used guilt and manipulation to get their way. They'd pull any card they could to make me feel like I was the problem, even if it meant dragging my grandparents into it. People who had always been supportive of me, by the way. It was like they couldn't, accept that maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who needed to take a long, hard look at themselves. I didn't respond to the voicemail. What was the point? I'd said my piece, and I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their drama, but that didn't mean it didn't weigh on me. For days after that, I kept thinking about the reunion, about all the relatives who were going to be there, thinking I was just refusing to make peace. I wondered how many of them actually knew the full story, how many were getting the twisted version my parents were feeding them. The reunion came and went, and I didn't hear a word from my parents afterward. I saw some photos on Facebook, happy faces, family hugs, the whole deal. My parents were smiling, acting like everything was fine, like they hadn't just spent the last year trying to destroy my life. It was weird seeing them like that, pretending everything was perfect. But I guess that's what they were always good at, pretending. A few weeks later, I ran into Melissa again, and she told me the reunion had been awkward. Apparently, a lot of people had expected me to show up, and when I didn't, there were some uncomfortable conversations. My parents had tried to explain my absence, but from what Melissa said, it didn't go over well. A few relatives even started questioning why I wasn't there, and why my parents hadn't been more honest about the whole situation. I guess not everyone was buying their story after all. And that, I guess, is where things stand now. I've managed to distance myself from the drama, but I know it's always lurking there, just beneath the surface. My parents will probably never admit they were wrong, and I've accepted that I can't change them. But what I can do is protect myself, keep building my life without their influence, and focus on the people who actually care about me for real. It's been a long road, and I'm not going to lie, it still hurts sometimes. Cutting off your family isn't easy, and there are days when I wonder if I did the right thing. But deep down, I know I had to. I had to choose myself, my mental health, and my own future over the toxic cycle they kept trying to drag me into. So yeah, that's the end of this wild ride. Maybe one day things will change, maybe they won't, but either way, I'm done letting my family control my life. I've got my own path to walk now, and for the first time in a long time, I'm walking it on my own terms.